Welcome to SJS Arts. So today I'm gonna talk about books that I own but I haven't read yet. So this is gonna be quite embarrassing because there are so many of these books considering my collection is quite small, especially compared to many other people. But the biggest sin of my intellectual life is probably the fact that I've never been able to set myself a kind of a consistent reading schedule. And I always have this kind of bipolar ups and downs with reading, so sometimes I have these really huge slumps when I'm not reading any books. I mean, I'm always reading something, but they maybe aren't kind of full on books and stuff. Yeah. And this year has been completely abysmal for me in terms of reading, but I want to get back into it. And one of my motivations to do this video is that I think if you viewers see some of your favorite books on this video and then you tell me about it, that might give me some motivation to start reading again, hopefully. And then also I kind of realized that I hadn't made any book related videos in a while, even though that's supposed to be part of my channel. So I realized that I should do a book related video, and I thought that this would be fun and embarrassing one to do. And one disclaimer is that I'm also gonna talk about politics and philosophy a bit on this video because lots of these books fall under that category, so if that turns you off, don't watch this video. So let's start with the books. So the first book I'm gonna show you is the book that is my latest purchase. So it's Confessions of a Mask by Yukio Mishima. So I'm very interested in Mishima. I've seen some films about him and one of his own films, Patriotism, and those were really interesting to me. And he's a gay man. This is about kind of gay person's fantasies and what it is like to be the closet, I think. So that sounds very interesting and relatable to me. So that's why I want to read this. And again, this is one of Mishima's most famous novels, and I've heard many people say that this is a good place to start. So very excited, and again, this is a short one, so I think this is one book that I might read fairly soon. But let me know your thoughts about any of these books. Again, that's what I want out of this video, so I might get some motivation to read these. So this is the last book I bought from London when I was still living there. I bought this from the airport when I was about to fly back to Finland. I was in a bittersweet mood then because I wasn't sure whether that was the right call. So this is Last Exit to Brooklyn by Hubert Selby Jr. Kind of a modern classic again. This sounds very interesting. Don't know when I will read it, but it sounds interesting, so yeah. Then we have Berlin Alexanderplatz by Alfred Döblin. Again, I love the Fassbinder TV show of this, so that's why I got the novel as well. I don't know how similar it is to the TV show, but I'm looking forward to finding out. Then we have some non-fiction. The Origins of Totalitarianism by Hannah Arendt. One of the most important works of politics from the 20th century. Again, very excited about this. Again, the length turns me off a bit, but this is something that I'm definitely very interested in. And again, this is something that they read a lot in my department, so in the university, yeah. And I've had some classes on it. Then more non-fiction, it's Georges Bataille's Eroticism. So this to me kind of seems like similar to Foucault's History of Sexuality that I will show later on this video. But this sounds very fascinating. I've kind of read pages here and there, and yeah, it sounded very provocative and interesting. Again, he talks about incest here, for example. I think he said something like it's the man's biggest interest or something like that. So yeah, interesting, provocative stuff. Yeah, and Bataille is a very interesting philosopher. Again, I've read Blue of Noon, which is one of his novels, which I really loved. But Bataille seems to be partly forgotten about now. There are other French philosophers that are way more well known. But Bataille was very influential, obviously. Again, I think Foucault, for example, was a big fan of Bataille, so excited about this one. Then we go into the Oxford classics. So this is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This got influence from my favorite book of all time, Against Nature by Jori Karl Huysmans. So that's one of the reasons I want to read this, and obviously one of the biggest classics of all time. So then we have Ivan Turgenev's First Love and Other Stories. So last year I read Ivan Turgenev's Fathers and Sons, and that became one of my favorite novels of all time. So I immediately knew that I wanted to read something else from him, so I got this one. Again, a short read, so this one I might read soon if I get back to reading. Then I think I forgot to mention in the beginning that there are certain books here where I've read parts of them or chapters of them, but not the whole things, but I wanted to show these as well. So I've read like the first 3 books of this, or chapters of it, but they call them books here. So it's Plato's Republic. And this is very embarrassing that someone who has studied politics and philosophy for years in university hasn't read the whole thing, but I'm gonna blame my degree programs for that, because they don't like often force us to read like entire books. They often give us chapters and parts to read, but not the entire books. And yeah, and also my bachelor's degree, which was in a different university, wasn't very heavy on political philosophy. My master's program is full of that, but which I love because, again, that's my main interest. But my bachelor's was about kind of just more kind of contemporary events and stuff like that. So we didn't read the classics there. But again, I've read the first 3 books here, and this is surprisingly easy to read and very interesting. So I will be finishing this. Again, I've been going through it in a short but steady pace. Yeah. I've gone kind of book at a time, so I read one book in one sitting and then go to the other one. Yeah. Then we have very famous French novel from the 19th century. It's Bel Ami by Guy de Maupassant. Yeah, this sounds like exactly my type of thing, and again, the little French literature that I have read, I've loved pretty much all of it, so I think I'm gonna be a fan of this as well. Then a really huge classic of English literature. It's Paradise Lost by John Milton. This is probably gonna be a very challenging read, but also I'm looking forward to it. Then we have more philosophy, one of the most famous works of philosophy ever. Again, this is one that I also should have read by now, but it's Thus Spoke Zarathustra by Friedrich Nietzsche. So I've had classes on Nietzsche, read many quotes by him and certain pages from certain books of his, but I've never read an entire work by him. But I think this is probably a pretty good place to start. So next is a book that has 2 works of philosophy by John Locke. So we have the Second Treatise of Government, which I've read most of because I had a class on it where we read chapters of it but not the whole thing, and then Letter Concerning Toleration, also had a class on that, and I've read that completely. A Letter Concerning Toleration isn't a very good work. It's pretty stupid, but it's about religious toleration, by the way, but it's not very tolerant because he doesn't tolerate atheists and Catholics, if I remember correctly, because Catholics are loyal to the Pope, so they cannot be loyal to the state. I think he said something like that, and then atheists are cunts, basically, according to him. But Second Treatise of Government is one of the most important works of liberal philosophy. Again, I think it's a work that both leftists and right-wing people can kind of like, because it's not clearly either left or right, I would say. But I don't necessarily agree with many points there, because I'm very critical of the state and the government, and I think Locke is a bit naive when it comes to them, even though he is also at the same time critical of them. But not critical enough, if you ask me. Yeah. But still very interesting works. And they are fairly easy to read, even though again they are hundreds of years old. Then something in the similar way, this is David Hume's Enquiry Concerning Human Understanding, which is probably his main work. And this is kind of a rewrite of his earlier work, which is, what was it called? Is it a treatise on human understanding or something like that, or human nature? Yeah. But I haven't read that one. I haven't read any Hume yet, which is embarrassing, but I'm very much looking forward to him. And I think many people say that Hume is their favorite philosopher, that it's really a pleasure to read him. Yeah. And I want to get that essay collection someday as well. Then we have some works of fiction again. So we have Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy. Haven't read anything by Hardy, another embarrassing detail. But I'm gonna start with this one. I think many people won't start with this one, but to me this is not the most interesting. And I really want to read Tess, but as I love the film, I kind of thought that I would want to read something first that I haven't seen the film adaptation of. Then we have some Greek plays, so it's by Euripides. These are hard to pronounce, especially because in Finland we pronounce these Greek names very differently than you do in English. But this is Medea and other plays. Again, I haven't read many or any plays in my life, so I'm very excited to get into that. Yeah, fuck, so many embarrassing details about my lack of knowledge in this video, but it's good to humble myself sometimes so that I won't become too cocky, which I sometimes am. Then more philosophy, A Discourse on the Method by René Descartes. A classic. Again, Descartes is one of the most important philosophers ever, and I had a teacher, the one that taught me Locke. He has actually translated Descartes into Finnish, but this is in English. But I'm very excited, very excited. Then we have more fiction. It's Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Again, another big English classic that I haven't read yet. Then 4 more Oxford classics to go. So we have more French literature now. So we have Pierre Goriot, or The Old Man Goriot by Honoré de Balzac. This is something that I'm also like very looking forward to. Might be one of the next books I read. Again, not a very long one, and I know many leftists really like this book, and I'm a leftist. Even though I used to be on the right, by the way, but I'm a leftist these days, so I think this will probably be something that I like both politically and but also in terms of enjoyment. So yeah, and this is translated by H.A. Grailsheimer. Interesting name. Yeah, but Balzac, looking forward to getting into him. Again, I love Flaubert a lot, and Balzac and Maupassant are the other 2 French writers of pretty much the same period of writing, so I'm looking forward to getting into them. Then we have one of the most famous works of philosophy ever, the Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle. I'm currently in a writing process of writing about Aristotle's book 2 of Rhetoric. I've also written about I think book 1 that has the ethos, pathos and logos stuff, because my university specializes in rhetoric, so every teacher talks about Aristotle's rhetoric there, and then Kenneth Burke and Perelman and those classic works of rhetoric. But yeah, this one is probably, along with Politics, Aristotle's most famous work, and really looking forward to this one. Although I often hear that Aristotle is one of the more kind of dry philosophers to read. But I think Rhetoric that I have been reading, so I think that isn't like, I mean, it's a bit dry, but not like the worst thing possible. Then more philosophy and theology, so this is the major works by Anselm of Canterbury. Again, I would call myself an humanist atheist, but I also am still very interested in religion, and I want to hear views that differ from mine, because I don't like to live in an echo chamber. And the fact that I don't live in an echo chamber actually managed to make me left wing, even though I used to be right wing. And by the way, when I say right wing, I don't mean those like Daily Wire not jobs or anything like that. I wasn't like that. I was just pro-capitalism, but then in issues that weren't relating to the economy, I was pretty left-wing already then. So yeah, but now I'm kind of a critic of capitalism as well. So that's kind of how my views have changed in the last couple of years. But yeah, interested in this, and this has a essay I think on free will, which is something I'm interested in. Yeah, and then the last Oxford classic is this one I have actually been reading a bit, so it's The Flowers of Evil by Charles Baudelaire. So I just finished a manga called The Flowers of Evil that kind of was inspired by this, and I had this book already before reading the manga, and I had read some of the poems then, but now that I love the manga, I kind of got back to this and read some poems of it, but I'm enjoying the poems so far. Again, I'm not an expert on poetry, I don't know much poetry, or I haven't read much poetry, but I'm enjoying it, and it's something that I want to get into more in the future. So then we have perhaps the most embarrassing part of this video, and it is that I haven't read the Odyssey by Homer. I've read the Iliad and enjoyed the Iliad, but I haven't read the Odyssey. Even though in my painting video I kind of talked about the Odyssey because I know the story through other media, so I can kind of talk about the story even though I haven't read the book. But again, very excited to read it because I love the Iliad, but yeah, we'll see when I get to this. Then another work of philosophy, or two works, John Stuart Mill's On Liberty and the Subjugation of Women. On Liberty is a very important work, of course. I was planning to make an essay on it on one class that I had on conceptual philosophy, but then I ended up kind of doing the essay on the idea of social contract. But if I had done the essay on this, I would have read this, but I haven't read it yet. But again, very, very interested in it. Yeah. Then we have another very famous classic. It's the Metamorphoses of Ovid, or Ovidius, like we say in Finnish. But yeah, this is one that I'm very excited to read. It's probably gonna be a fairly difficult read, but very much looking forward to it. Then we have Letters from a Stoic from Seneca. Again, I've read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, which I liked for the most part, so I'm looking forward to reading more Stoic stuff. Again, I've kind of also engaged myself with Stoic philosophy through other mediums like podcasts and stuff like that, but I still need to read more. So then we have something from a kind of similar period of time. So we have the Three Theban plays by Sophocles. I was actually reading one of these plays on a bus once, but then there was people like talking really loudly next to me, so then I just decided that I cannot read this now, and then I haven't come back to it, but looking forward to it. Then we have a French classic, it's the Charterhouse of Parma by Stendhal. Again, another 19th century classic. And 19th century seems to be a kind of century where lots of the books are something that I really like reading, so that's probably my favorite century for literature so far, so I'm really excited to read these French classics of the era. So then we have a work, or kind of collection of works by Tolstoy. So I've read The Death of Ivan Ilyich, that is the kind of main part of this, but there are other stories here that I haven't read, so I've read the main stuff but not the other stories. I really like Death of Ivan Ilyich, by the way. Then we have the work of fiction that I'm perhaps the most excited of, although due to its length I'm not sure when I'm gonna get to it. It's The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. And even though I haven't read this, I consider Dostoevsky to be my favorite author because I love Crime and Punishment and Notes from Underground. Those two are on my top 5 books of all time, and then I also really like The Double. Those 3 I have read, so I need to read this and The Idiot and other stuff. Then we have more works that will probably be very difficult reads, but I'm still excited for them. So we have Fear and Trembling by Søren Kierkegaard. Yep. Then we have Essays and Aphorisms by Schopenhauer. So these I've read a little bit, but not much of, and I don't have much to say about it yet. But Schopenhauer seems to be a very interesting thinker, although again he has that one essay where he kind of talks about his hatred of women, and I think again that's something that hasn't aged that well, to say the least. Then one more Penguin classic, and then we are done with them, I think. Another work of philosophy. Okay, lots of these philosophy books are fairly recent purchases, and I haven't had these for a very long time. So we have Benedict Spinoza, Ethics. Yeah, Spinoza is an interesting thinker. I've kind of seen in the online discourse that people either considering him to be like their favorite philosopher, or they find him like fairly boring and second rate. But we'll see what I think of him. Again, this, when I've kind of browsed through this, it seems like a fairly difficult work, but we'll see. We'll see. So the rest of the books are kind of a interesting mix as well. There are some more modern stuff here, but also some classics. So we have The Broom of the System by David Foster Wallace, and I've never read anything from him, but I thought that I would maybe try this before Infinite Jest, because this is shorter even though fairly long. And this sounded interesting, so yeah. But I'm not currently that interested in reading Wallace. I was more interested when I picked this book up a few years ago. And now I'm kind of more interested in a bit older classics than this, but I'm sure that I will read this someday. But probably won't be anytime soon. Then this next one I've shown in other videos too, but it's The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann, one of the big modernist classics from the early part of the 20th century. Apparently a very difficult work, but also sounds very interesting. Then we have Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five. I've read Breakfast of Champions, which I enjoyed, but haven't read this one yet. But yeah, looking forward to it. Then we have The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. So here he basically, from what I know, talks about again why like right and left wing people disagree on things, even though you could say both of them are like good or normal people. Yeah, it's basically about polarization of politics and philosophy and religion. So that's something that very much interests me. And I've seen some talks with Haidt in YouTube and stuff, and he seems like an interesting person, even though at this moment I'm not that interested in this kind of pop philosophy and science, but more interested in the kind of bit more hardcore stuff, but I'm still looking forward to this. Then we have a thinker who I'm very much familiar with for many reasons, but I haven't read this book entirely, but I've read pretty big chunks of it, not recently though, and it's The Road to Serfdom by Hayek, Friedrich Hayek. So this is something I would have like agreed with quite a lot. Again, back when I was pro-capitalism, but now as a lefty I don't agree with it as much. Although I'm not again, as I'm very critical of the state, I'm not that kind of state socialist that you see a lot these days, that again Hayek would not be a fan of. But again, I'm not a capitalist either, far from it, so yeah. And I'm actually doing my master's thesis on Hayek's teacher, who made Hayek go from socialist to a free market capitalist. So I'm doing my thesis on Ludwig von Mises, so yeah. So Mises I kind of know at this point pretty inside out, because I've read him quite a lot and written about him quite a lot, but most people talk about Hayek more than Mises, but I know Mises better than Hayek, so yeah, but they are very similar thinkers, of course. Then we have notoriously one of the most difficult works of philosophy ever written. It's Phenomenology of Spirit by Hegel. Again, Hegel was a big influence on Marx, of course, and many other thinkers, and the Hegelian dialectic is something that people talk about a lot still to this day. Again, hopefully I will understand something out of that work when I eventually get to it. But again, it's not necessarily kind of my main interests in philosophy, so I don't know when I will read it, but I just wanted to get it to my shelf because I know that I'm gonna read it someday. Yeah. And there are lots of works like that that I just know that I want to read that someday, but it might not be soon. Then we have some pop, philosophy, economics and politics. And these I'm not that interested in reading anymore. I was more interested in reading this back when I was right wing, capitalist or pro-capitalism. But even then I already kind of disagreed with this person quite a lot because I've never been a conservative. So this is Thomas Sowell's Economic Facts and Fallacies. And again, I think people who kind of I'm in agreement with these days usually kind of laugh at Sowell and people like him, and they call him a right-wing grifter and stuff like that. I'm not gonna say what I think of him because I don't actually know that much about him, other than the very basics that he's a conservative and he believes in capitalism, and he is kind of very much disagrees with the kind of left's kind of views on race and stuff like that. But yeah, I think I'm probably not gonna agree with him on basically anything these days. I probably would have agreed with more with him back when I was pro-capitalism, but probably not now. Yeah. But again, I had a very huge problem with the conservatives, even back when I was a pro-capitalism person. And obviously, I mean, that makes sense being a kind of queer person myself, and I know that even the kind of libertarian right usually kind of hates people like me. So I'm really glad that I kind of got out of that mindset and that group, and now I'm intellectual comrades with I mean, I don't really use that word ever, but I'm intellectual comrades with people who actually don't mind queer people, so that's nice. Yeah, I've been talking about my own views quite a lot in this video. Hopefully that doesn't turn people off that much. Yeah. So then we have again more kind of popular science philosophy stuff. So this is Superintelligence by Nick Bostrom, who's a philosopher scientist. Again, he has developed the kind of simulation theory a lot, and this is what this book is about, and that's very interesting to me. This even has quote from Elon Musk, who obviously talks about it too. I mean, fuck Elon Musk, by the way. Like, if you actually look what he says in Twitter and stuff, like, yeah, fucking hell, like, yeah. But this is very interesting still, or it should be. Then we have this one I've read. Some of these, again, one of my teachers is a scholar of this thinker and an expert on this thinker, so it's Giorgio Agamben and State of Exception. And the idea of state of exception is something that kind of really speaks to me, again, as a very, very harsh critic of the idea of having a state. But I think Agamben went a bit nuts with the COVID stuff. I don't know what he exactly said, but I think he's kind of a COVID denialist in some way, which I'm not, because I again took the vaccine and I wore a mask and stuff, even though I didn't agree with all the stuff that was happening then, but I again definitely wasn't a denialist, but apparently Agamben is to some extent, yeah. Then we have a book about the Frankfurt School that I'm very much interested in. I've read some Adorno and Horkheimer. I read the Dialectic of Enlightenment, which was probably in the conversation for the most difficult book I've ever read. But yeah, this is the idea of the critical theory by Raymond Geuss, who is a philosophy professor, I think in Cambridge. Or I think he is now emeritus professor, but still. But yeah, here he talks about Habermas, who is kind of the second generation Frankfurt thinker, but also the Frankfurt School in general. I'm probably most interested myself in Adorno and then Herbert Marcuse, that we are going to talk about in a bit, and Erich Fromm. I got really interested in him Although I think there's some disagreement with whether he belongs to the Frankfurt School or something like that, or maybe he belonged to it but then kind of left from it or something like that. But Eric Fromm, who wrote Escape from Freedom and The Sane Society, like we had classes on that in my humanist course at philosophy this year, and I got really fascinated on it. Then we have Rousseau's Social Contract. I've read Rousseau's discourse, the first discourse, or is it the second discourse, the one on inequality? But yeah, I fucking hate the concept of the social contract. Like, how is it a contract when the state forces me to abide by their rules with the power of the monopoly of violence? How the fuck is that a contract? No, it's an act of force. It's not a contract. I just absolutely loathe that concept. I actually wrote an essay that was a critique of it, like I said earlier. But yeah, I'm still interested in reading that book, and I've read kind of parts of it, but yeah. Then we have another very difficult work of philosophy. Apparently it's the Being and Time from Martin Heidegger. Again, not my main interest in philosophy, but I know that if I want to get deep into the subject, I need to read this someday, but I'm not necessarily very much looking forward to it, but I know just that I want to sit through it one time in my life at least. Then we have this art book. I don't have many art books, but I want to get more, and I've kind of again browsed through this, but I haven't read the whole thing, and it's by Anna Mozinska. It's abstract art, so it's kind of book that goes through the history of abstract art and has pictures and stuff, so very interesting. So I have Frank Herbert's Dune, and I'm excited to read this at some point, but it's not gonna be soon. Then I have From Dawn to Decadence. This is by Jacques Barzoun, and this is kind of cultural history book. Again, I want to read more history in the future, and I'm interested in cultural history, so I got this book. Then I have the second and third parts of the Game of Thrones book series, Song of Ice and Fire. I've read the first one, which was pretty good, but I'm not that interested in reading those anymore. I got them when I was a teenager, when I was kind of in my peak interest with Game of Thrones, but I might read them someday. Then we have a big American classic, To Kill a Mockingbird. Excited to read it. I love the film adaptation. Then we have Christopher Hitchens' book, God is Not Great. Again, this is more of kind of pop philosophy, but I'm still kind of looking forward to this. I got this very cheap when it was, and it was a second-hand copy. Yeah. Then I have a Finnish kind of book about Soren Kierkegaard by a philosophy professor, Torsti Lehtinen. So it's just Soren Kierkegaard, and it says in Finnish, intohimon, ahdistuksen ja huumorin filosofi. Then I have, this is in Finnish, Mitä on valistus? So this is an essay collection on the Enlightenment. So we have essays from, I think, Immanuel Kant, Theodor Adorno, Mendelssohn, Wollstonecraft. I've read her a bit, Hume, Rousseau, Friedrich Schiller, even Antonio Gramsci. Then I have a book called How Democracies Die by Stephen Levitsky and Daniel Ziblatt. I think they're Harvard scholars. Again, the title of the book kind of says what it is about. Very relevant topic. So now let's go back to the Penguin Classics that I forgot to talk about earlier. So we have kind of an anarcho-communist classic. We have The Conquest of Bread by Peter Kropotkin. This is out of the philosophy books, one of the next ones I'm gonna read. Again, I've kind of criticized the state a lot in this video, so I'm very interested in anarchist philosophy. Although, again, there are many different types of anarchism, and some of them makes more sense than others and stuff, but yeah, very interesting to see what Kropotkin's type of anarchism will be about. Yeah. Again, I know some things about it already, but not in any kind of detailed manner. But then we have more fiction. We have Gogol's Dead Souls, one of the big classics of the 19th century. Again, Gogol, many people say he's a Russian writer, but I think he was from Ukraine. Yeah. But very interested in reading this. Yeah. Then we have the Divine Comedy by Dante. I've actually read most of Inferno, but I've really struggled with this. I think that I should have probably gotten the Finnish translation for this. It might have been a bit easier for me. But yeah, this is still very interesting stuff, and I love lots of visual art on the Divine Comedy. Then we have one of the greatest classics, apparently, Don Quixote by Cervantes. Looking forward to it, although the length, yeah. Fuck, like, it's so embarrassing that I haven't read these again. Yeah, I have so much reading to do. And then there are so many books that I don't own that I want to read too. Then non-fiction, The Civil War by Julius Caesar. Again, I'm very much interested in this time period of history, so that's why I got this one. Then a big Russian classic, The Master and the Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. Again, apparently a quite difficult work as well, but sounds so interesting and fascinating. Those were the Penguin classics. Then we have a couple of more works of philosophy and stuff, and then we have some hardbacks. So this one I've read. This is an essay collection. I've read the first couple of essays and really loved them, and they kind of are something that I agree with a lot. Not with like absolutely every sentence, but much of it. So it's Anarchism and Other Essays by Emma Goldman, one of the kind of famous anarchist, feminist thinkers. Yeah, so the first two essays, one of them was like, what is anarchism, I think, and the other was about minorities and majorities that kind of made the snobby part of my brain kind of laugh in joy. But very interesting thinker, and if you want to learn about anarchism, I think that would be a good collection to have, and I'm gonna continue with the essays very soon. Then the next thinker is someone who actually played an integral part of me kind of transitioning from the kind of liberal right-wing side to the left. I mean, this is pretty, I think, cliche thinker to say when you say something like that, and it's Herbert Marcuse, and this is One Dimensional Man. So again, I know the ideas in kind of summarized way from this book. Again, the kind of his ideas of freedom and how in capitalist society people can never be their true selves and stuff like that. That was something that kind of got me to change my views slowly but steadily. And actually in my thesis there's a subchapter where I talk about one essay collection from Marcuse where he criticizes Mises, although I don't like the Marcuse's critic there, because he kind of takes a small quote out of context in a very dishonest way there, which I don't agree with. And there's an interesting chat from the 70s with Marcuse on YouTube if you are interested in it. But this is one book that I'm very much looking forward to reading. Again, I know the ideas quite well already, but not in the detailed way that they will be in the book. I've actually used a quote from here in my book recently. I can't remember where it was. I think it was in the page 10. I wrote an essay like critique of humanism from anarchist perspective. That was a fun essay to write, and my teacher really loved the essay. Oh yeah, this was the introduction. Oh wait. So it was this one: free election of masters does not abolish the masters or the slaves. That's what I used in the humanist essay. I think that's a good quote, like very short quote that kind of sums up the issue really well. But interesting book, I'm sure this is. So then I have this kind of collection of philosophy professor essays. This is in Finnish, filosofian historian kehityslinjoja. So this was kind of one of my teachers has written here. as well, and I think other academics from my university and other universities. But yeah, there is kind of, this is like the development lines of the history of philosophy. That would be the title in English, if it was in English, but very interesting stuff. This I showed in one whole video, but is the complete works of Shakespeare by Oxford. It's very embarrassing that I still haven't read any Shakespeare, but I've been meaning to get into this, but I haven't yet. But yeah, fucking embarrassing. Then I have Karl Popper's The Open Society and Its Enemies, where he criticizes Plato, Marx, and I think someone else too. And Hegel. Yeah, of course Hegel. But I think most scholars agree that Popper's thoughts on Plato are really wrong and inaccurate, but I don't know how his thoughts on Marx will be. That's something that I can analyze better myself, because I've read a bit of Marx and I'm kind of familiar with the kind of most important Marxist ideas. So yeah, but I think the part on Hegel, it will be really hard for me to kind of say how accurate it is. So maybe I should like read Hegel first before this. Yeah, that sounds very interesting. The next book I have both in English and in Finnish, but I'll just show this old Finnish copy though. This is Tolstoy's War and Peace. Or, I mean, there are like multiple copies or volumes of this, but I started reading War and Peace once, but then I did not finish it, not because it wasn't good, but just the length was overwhelming. Yeah, but still very much looking forward to getting into it someday. Then a Finnish classic by Väinö Linna, Under the Northern Star, täällä Pohjantähden alla. I don't think there's an English translation, but there's an English translation of his even more famous novel, which is The Unknown Soldier. You can get it in Penguin Modern Classic. It's a great book if you are interested in war novels about the World War II. Finland versus the Soviet Union. Yeah. Then I have the Gone with the Wind. I'm not that interested in reading it, but I kind of inherited this copy from my grandfather basically. So I might read it someday, but we'll see. Then I have Herman Melville's Moby Dick, often thought to be the great American novel. Very much looking forward to it. Not sure when I will read it, but I think I'm probably gonna enjoy it. Then I have by Everyman's Library a collection of Albert Camus works. So this has The Plague, The Fall, Exile and the Kingdom, and also I think The Myth of Sisyphus. It doesn't say it here, but I believe it is here as well. So this is one that I got fairly recently, so I haven't read them yet, but I'm looking forward to them, all of them. Then I have Ulysses by James Joyce. Hopefully this won't be too difficult for me, but yeah, looking forward to it when I get to it. Then I have Leo Tolstoy's Resurrection, one of his not as famous books, but apparently very good one still. Then the rest of the books are Finnish classics. We have Seitsemän veljestä by Alexis Kivi, a very big national classic. So it would be Seven Brothers in English. Don't think it has been translated into English though, but this next one has been. It's Kalevala, Our National Epoch. Or epic, I think. Is that how you say it in English? Yeah. But still, you can get that from with like many different editions in English too. Yeah. Then the rest are by a famous Finnish author Mika Waltari. So we have Johannes Angelos, we have Mikael Karvajalka, we have Mikael Haakkim, and we have Turms Kuolematon. I've read Sinuhe Egyptiläinen by Mika Waltari, or Sinuhe the Egyptian. It has been translated into English though, but it's out of print. But it's one of my top 10 novels of all time, so I'm really looking forward to those other ones too when I have the time to read them. But anyway, this is very embarrassing. I went in pretty personal with the politics stuff too, so hopefully you didn't mind that. But anyway, thanks for watching this. Please let me know your favorites out of these books if you have read any of them, which ones I should read soon, and you can also let me know your thoughts about literature or philosophy or politics in general. yeah. Although I rather not have like a huge battle on like ideologies and stuff under the comments, even though I kind of shed some light into my own views a bit. No, not that much though, but because there's way more nuance there, of course. But anyway, thanks for watching. Don't drink all the Coke, and ciao.